All right, welcome everyone to this little podcast with Frank and Ryan, and we're going to set up the workshop on flip learning by talking a little bit about our experiences in PDHPE with the flip learning classroom, and reflect a little bit about what we've learnt along the way and the kind of things that we're planning to do next, and hopefully give you some insights as to what the flip learning experience is like. So. Ryan, why do we do it? Why do we take maybe what some of the kids thought as a risk and flip our classroom in Year 12?
We certainly felt that the students, that we were spending a lot of time in the classroom explaining the content and trying to get them to understand the actual, the syllabus points and things like that, and not having enough time to focus on the actual skills, so the learn to points in the syllabus. And we felt that we wanted to challenge the students a little bit more in the classroom, do some higher order thinking work, and get them to actually solve some problems in the classroom, get to the crux of what we want them to do. And so the flipping allowed us more time to do that in the classroom.
So Ryan said to me when I came back that these kids were kind of not the same kids that I was used to at Cerdon in with respect to their abilities and the ownership of their learning and also how deeply they learn. So it took probably the best part of Year 11, I suppose, before we realised that anything that you're going to do was not going to be the right kind of thing for these kids. We really needed to find another way of working with these kids to, as Ryan said, to focus on to the learn tos and the learn abouts and get some activity in the classroom that was meaningful for the kids. Did you see it as a risk?
Yeah, definitely. I think the students are pretty comfortable with what we were doing previously, but you could clearly see that it wasn't challenging them, it wasn't encouraging them to think independently and all of that. So yeah, it was a risk, as students, when they're comfortable, it can be they can push back a little bit against some of the things that you want to put forward, some innovative things, and they did a little bit, which we might talk about a little bit later. But I guess the ultimate thing is getting the students to think a bit more critically about the work.
And had we not done anything, I think the risk would have been greater.
I think
by not doing anything.
Yeah, I think so, because the more time that we have available to us to allow the students to get their hands on the real problems that they need to solve, the better.
So how did we go about it? What we sat down, I suppose, and when we made the decision to do it, and really had to think about how this was going to happen in terms of the resources. So what did you find along the way in terms of how we did this?
Well, I remember sitting down together with you, and we talked about what parts of the syllabus would be conducive to flipping. It doesn't always, we found that it didn't always work to flip, but there are a lot of parts in the PE course that we could certainly flip, and then we basically just divided the parts up between us, and we both worked on sections, didn't we? And then we tried to create as much in advance as we could, I think, and that helped us to be a bit more organised and focus on those important things in the class. And
it makes sense to have a partner, doesn't it? Because if you try and do it all yourself in the one hit, you run yourself ragged. I think it's fair to say we could both be pretty comfortable just churning out the same things each year. We've got booklets, we've got resources, we've got worksheets. But the kids need a little bit more than that. They actually need something different, I think.
I think so. We both had extensive booklets and collections of worksheets and stuff that we'd used before, but we really abandoned it, didn't we?
We had to move away from that because the kids just weren't responding to what we had done previously. So we made that decision. We kind of planned it, worked out how it was going to work in terms of the breakdown and in terms of the materials. So what do we have to do? What was the next real step for us after that? What was the guts of the work?
Yeah, and during that planning phase, we investigated some ways that we could present the material, and then once we got into that, it was really trying to convert a lot of our online digital stuff into videos and other, I guess more innovative, engaging presentations and things like that. And I found personally that a lot of the digital stuff that I had, I really tried my best just to convert that into like a video or something like that, instead of reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, so I think we've got a fair catalogue now of, and the whole course has been redone in 12 months. I don't think there's any part of it really that would look the same this year as in previous years. So, as Ryan said, we made a lot of videos quite easily, whether we're doing the same way that we're doing them now, just a little screencast. We made a number of podcasts as well, and used some podcasts from some previous groups around psychology that some kids previously had recorded. Lots of slideshows. The kids really seem to... and we'll talk to the kids later about what they thought were effective resources. We had some PDFs, some documents that we shared with the kids either through Google Docs, etc. And most of that work this year was shared up through Edmodo. So there's a bit of a plan for us now to put the whole course in a structured way up on iTunes U, and the advantage of that is the kids can just hit iTunes U, they can find the PDHP course, they can download the course, and they can work through the course in a really structured way. And it's one of those things that we're going to learn, and then we'll do some training with you in the not too distant future, just to show you what the benefits of iTunes U is, and particularly for senior kids. I think it's a good platform to use. And of course, we did our podcasts, which is our little breakfast show for the kids. And really, that was a way of getting the kids together, so they felt that they were in one class.
That's right.
Rather than disparate classes.
Yeah, which is really important.
And how did that come about? That was really just us having a chat. We met every Thursday morning. I think we decided just to check in with each other, just to see how we were going with the resource development, bounce ideas off each other. Collect resources from each other, I suppose, and share them.
We talked a bit about how the students were travelling and some of the challenges. Some of the challenges they faced, and where we think they needed to improve. And it was very laid back and really just a conversation where we hit record.
And that was it. And then that was produced for the kids, because really we were talking about the kids and their learning, so it kind of made sense to play it back to them. And rather than do it individually in classes, it made much more sense that we would record that, put it up there for the kids. And obviously for the next group, hopefully we'll do it again. Obviously they'll have different challenges and different problems that they'll have. Now, we were talking the other day, probably one thing that we didn't give enough thought to was the formal and the informal assessment. So do you want to talk a little about the entry and the exit ticket? Something we didn't do a lot of.
I think the entry ticket is really just a formative assessment to find out where they're at to begin with and what they know. And they complete. It could be a quiz, or it could be a written piece of work. It could be a discussion. It could be whatever suits your purpose. And then so you know where they're at, and then you plan from there. And then your exit ticket is just what the students have learnt as a result of the information that you've pushed out to them. So if they watch a video or they do some work, they complete the exit ticket. I guess it's a benchmark, isn't it, that they need to get to, and informs us about whether they're ready to move on or not. And it's just a great way to know where the kids are at.
And it's also a really good piece of feedback for us, because if the kids aren't getting it, we're obviously not doing the right thing. So it's not only just about the kids, but it's also about how we're going, the quality of the resource, the quality of the teaching in the classroom, and all those things. I don't think we did enough of that during the course. I mean, there was consistent practice of writing through the course. But the kids were moving through the course really in a linear way, and they'd answer that question, looked okay, we moved on, and it all looked okay. But I don't think we gave enough thought to those points in time where we maybe needed to take a health check and stop and say to the kids, right, we're really not getting this concept. Let's drill down a bit and do those work. The other thing that I think that we learned on the way too, and I think if you've paid attention in the Google Classroom workshop the other day, is that and this gives us the opportunity to do this, is that we didn't spend enough time allowing the kids to work on their summative assessments in the classroom.
Yeah.
And I know that traditionally we say, look, we don't want to give the kids any feedback and all those other things, but those tasks are just so important for us in terms of benchmarking exactly where the kids are at. And part of this flip model is actually allowing the kids to work on those assessment for learning tasks, if you set them up properly, as an assessment for learning tasks in the classroom, so that you can give the kids feedback and you can work towards helping them sharpen their understanding a little bit and deepening that sometimes. And sometimes that happens after the fact. And as we know, once the kids get their mark, that bit of paper just goes away somewhere and they don't really refer back to it. So using every teachable moment in the classroom, I think, is really important, rather than sending the kids off home. And that's what the whole flip model is. Do what you can at home, but bring your questions and bring your assessment and do those sorts of things. So I think that's a thing that we really want to work on next year, just getting our feedback to them right. It's not about, that looks really good, but really deepening their understanding at points in time and getting them to write more succinctly and all those things that are important for our subject. So there are a couple of things that we still need to work through there. So the package that we've prepared for you has a whole lot of resources around flip learning. As you work through the package, there will be some definitions of what flip learning is. We've talked about flip learning rather than the flipped classroom. You'll understand, I think, as you look through the slides, that there's a little bit of a difference between flip learning and the classroom itself. And the presentation or the slide pack will take you through some examples of what you can do to prep yourself and the type of resources that are available out there to you, including the Google Classroom, for example, Google Docs, and all those things that can support the whole the flip model. We'll also be talking to Chris as a case study for drama, Chris Farlow, and we'll have a chat with him about how they're going about planning for their flipped classroom, because I think that's a really important thing for everyone to hear. And then later on in the slide pack, you'll hear from our students as well, and they'll tell you some of the things that they found being valuable and some of the challenges that they actually had. What about the note making method? We've used this Cornell note method, and this will come up in the slide pack. And can you explain a little bit why we needed a note making method?
To get students to think more critically and to reflect more on their learning, and to get them to make notes that are a bit more succinct and take in the really key messages. So I think a lot of the time with our students, we encourage them to, or not that we encourage them, but the students obviously believe that note taking is important, in the sense that they highlight things and they write down every single note that the teacher gives them, but they don't make any connections between them, and they tend not to reflect on them and reflect what they don't know. So the Cornell note-taking method allows them to organise it, keep it succinct, and reflect on what they don't know.
And that piece at the bottom there about what the kids are learning is so fundamental to the whole exit entry sort of ticket for each of those things. As I said, it's probably one of those things that we didn't quite get right in the first time around. But I think you agree, it does give us a lot of opportunity in the future to do those things. There's a little slide show in there from Parramatta Marist that talk about STEMs and the various things that they do in between each of those, the lessons that they do, and the type of reflections that they get from the kids. And for some of you that have been speaking about things like what happens when the kids don't watch the videos, there's a fair bit of accountability in there as well. So there are all those sorts of things are sort of ticked off in this little slide pack. So it's probably going to take you maybe a couple of hours to get through the slide pack and work through some of the little activities. There is an entry exam, I suppose, that we want everyone to take, which will show you how quick and easy it is to mark. And when we meet for the workshop, we'll do it flipped. So having watched all the material, you'll have that opportunity to think about, maybe plan for, and bring some resources with you to get started on a flipped experience. All right. Good luck, and hopefully you'll get something out of the slide pack. And if you're happy to talk, we're happy to talk with any of you if you've got some questions before the workshop.